people are getting
not even
jobs
back door. It's not even back door. It's front door.
It's in your face.
Just relax, amigo. You want to talk? We'll talk. I'm a sucker for good conversation.
I don't want to talk to you. Now you bringing the television cameras in here now. Come on, bring it in.
Guys being like, oh, well, if you're reading,
Why?
you find a pamphlet that you think is naughty,
Deal with psychos.
we're going to give you felony charge. Right. Yeah, it's like, and then what if you post them properly, or what if you put them in mailboxes of people who like want them to be there, and then someone just happens to see it who doesn't like it. Right. It's like, well, this is BS. And then notice how they use the you got freedom of speech, but that doesn't apply to farming. Freedom of speech isn't freedom of farming. It's like, well, right? Well, but that's the whole thing.
Real quick, do a quick sound test. Yeah. Give me a test here so I can hear you.
517 5112.
We've already got a bunch of people in the chat. 9 viewers.
That's good.
Listen to the show while waiting. A beeping noise will indicate when you are on with the host.
Testing. You hear that?
Yes, slight delay, but
It's fine. People are already talking about the Skittles.
yeah, good. They should just keep it as a permanent type of selection on the store shelves. Might even increase their
You
sales.
should put these on.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, the jams now. Are you hearing my microphone okay?
They're telling me it sounds good.
Audio sounds good, Roger, Roger.
Hang up. Sound is crisp and clear. I love that.
Excellent.
Are you on the chat?
Let me see the chat.
I see the chat.
Sound is crisp and clear. Love that. Are you on the chat?
Alright, we're gonna get an echo. Good deal.
I require the solace of the shadows and the dark of the night. Sunshine is my destroyer. There shall never be another dawn.
You're listening to the Zetetic newscast
Here's Xavier.
on the Zetetic News Network
Watching out for the blast.
with your hosts, Dave, and Xavier Diamant. Proceed by inquiry.
All right, welcome to episode 41 of the Zetetic News Cast. We are your hosts, Dave, and Xavier Diamant. It is March 9th, 2023, and we're very excited to be here and talk about so many different issues of world import. We are live streaming on YouTube and Theta.tv. We're the first next generation news network powered by the Theta network. So if you have the Edge node, Edgecast, check us out there. We're also on Theta.tv. We have had a couple technical issues with Rumble and Odyssey multicasting. I'm still trying to figure out what's going on there, but I'm not going to live stream tonight just to make sure this all goes smooth, because I hope we'll be joined by our very special guest who joined us on episode 37, Adam Green from No More News, calling in tonight to discuss what he calls the Abrahamic deception and its influence. It's really overlay, pick your topic, really. Medicine, science, politics, media,
Economics.
food, economics, weather. And so to kick off tonight's discussion, I wanted to highlight this hilarious gift from a friend of the show. Shout out to Tyler for sharing this. And if hopefully you're tuning in to the video stream here, but by the way, this is our first kind of live window into the Zetetic.news studio. So I'm here at my desk, and I got this lovely bag of LGBTQ plus Skittles. And I just want to sort of start the conversation with this as a framework, because I think it should be, if it's not, it should be on everybody's mind. The DEI agenda, if you've recently been laid off, as I have in the last couple of months, and you're looking for a new job, and you maybe haven't done that in a while, you're coming in much closer contact than just some annual, discrimination training. The real, the velvet glove being taken off, really, as it pertains to this agenda. And I thought the Skittles bag really, there's a lot of different jumping off points we could take here. The first thing that jumps out to me, and Xavier's over there jumping at the bit, right?
It's hilarious.
Okay, so this is, let me turn the bag over. In partnership with GLAAD, the gay and lesbian, what is that?
Is it an alliance?
Alliance, something.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the ADL for LGBTQ plus,
Right.
And they've partnered with, what is it, Mars Corporation? I forget who makes Skittles, but they say here down in the fine print, we're giving up our rainbow so LGBTQ plus artists can share theirs. And you turn it over, they've done away with the rainbow on the Skittles, although there are some colors on the package, but they've made all the Skittles white, which is like, what is the message here exactly? That seems like the opposite direction of LGBTQ plus values, if you take what they say at face value, right? Like, you'd almost say, if it didn't have the GLAAD logo on there, that this was like white nationalist Skittles. And I just find it really ironic. But also, like, they're not even really white. They're
Right.
gray Skittles.
Boring.
With a gray rainbow.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you have these characters. Now, why did all like the public health cartoons and like propaganda, they have gotten so ugly and dumbed down?
And they're colorized Wojaks, basically.
Yeah, they look like NPC characters. And I know Adam talks a lot about tribalism and the theological influence that has really, generated a lot of that tribalism. And I just think this is kind of just a part of that.
Well, and it's wild because there's kind of a hidden egregore here, which is, we gotta devour whiteness and the boring culture and influence they've had on the world. Make sure all of the Skittles are white, so that the people are just like devouring these white little scrumptions, these white little candies.
And you know, there's always a hidden intention. There's always a hidden motive behind some of these displays and these sort of PR events. I mean, besides the obvious thing of repping the new overlords, it's also, you have to denigrate that which is the scapegoat. And so, you know, whiteness is gray, it's boring, it's monogram, it's evolving into this new color-coded empire, essentially. And we're here to witness the progress of the elimination of whiteness. So gobble up those white Skittles while they last, because who knows what kind of new colors we're going to be sending down the pike in new packages next month. I mean, this came up earlier, is, you know, last month, right, was Black History Month. Why didn't Skittles do all black Skittles to really celebrate, you know, different shades of, you know, all chocolate, right? Maybe
they
like
do
a chocolate
they do Easter
Skittle.
colors and
Right.
and other such things. Yeah, it's very peculiar. And I just found the whole thing hilarious. The Glad logo on the back, like, this is, I guess in Mars Corporation or whoever makes Skittles mind, this is like a marketing sales ploy. But are people really demanding this kind of product marketing and product? I mean, what was wrong with the rainbow? That, to me, the rainbow is the most diverse. You got all the colors.
It's like a perma celebration.
Right.
Right.
And it reaches to many different sectors. Of course, the gay community has appropriated it and taken it, but it doesn't just symbolize homosexuality.
No.
Right. And you know, I think we have Adam on the line, and so I wanted to just jump over to a little meme I created. You know, perhaps you know, the ADL will partner with General Mills, and they'll you know, they'll create sort of like a instead of Captain Crunch, it'll be Rabbi Crunch, and he'll have a yarmulke and the sideburns, and then we'll all feel better about being different, I guess.
And you know, you could make the Captain Crunch special edition, have it be white and blue, just like the Israeli flag or something. You know, and make sure that people remember, you know, who's putting these products out, and making sure that you consume them, of course. And
you can feel good politically when you consume your high fructose corn syrup and your hydrogenated soybean oil and your estrogen mimickers that turn you into an LGBTQ plus NPC.
And that's progress, guys. That is the next 1,000 generations of healing that we're witnessing.
So, want to do a quick sound check. Adam, are you there? Have you had any gray Skittles today?
You able to
What's
hear
up,
us?
guys?
Yo.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Loud
we
and
can-
clear.
We can hear you. Excellent.
Good.
Welcome
Okay,
to the
no,
show.
let's see these Skittles. I'm looking at the screen. Wow, they those look like very stereotypical cartoonish characters. That's real? Is that a real thing?
This is a real thing. A friend of the show gave me this pack of share size Skittles, and it's they partnered with Glad, which is basically like the fag ADL, and they took the rainbow away and made all the Skittles gray. But you know, the most colorful thing on the front package is this, and man, they come out with a new flag. It seems like every week.
Yeah. Well, and that individual is like sort of possibly maybe of a European persuasion, but if we're gonna have someone of that demographic on the front of this promotional Skittles package, by golly, they better be waving that trans flag, because that's the future for whiteness. That's like the go-to category for people to feel like they're elevating their status in society. You know, they're going to be celebrated now instead of denigrated, instead of eliminated. They'll at least have some. Go for it.
I was going to ask: are the Skittles white or are they gray?
I was commenting on that earlier. You know, they're really gray.
Well, we could open the package and see if there's a color differentiation.
Oh yeah,
at
they
all.
really are gray.
Are they just gray?
Wow.
And they're supposed to be gross. Gray equals boring, right? We need the rainbow back. We need the rainbow Skittles because you can't.
I know, yeah. It's like it's already taste the rainbow, so they had to, instead of just keeping the rainbow, they had to make them all gray. That's weird.
This reminds me of that multiculturalism.
NPCs. They look like little NPCs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It reminds me of this great meme we have on our Instagram, and it's like multiculturalism, and it compares the Play-Doh when you get it in all of its discrete colors to what happens when you mix it all together, and you get this really ugly, kind of gross. And that, to me, that's like the Cloward and Piven
Kudnoff-Kalergi,
plan to homogenize society under one rule.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to.
Yeah, but he said caramel color, didn't he? Somebody said
true.
Caramel color. I heard that.
True. Sort of cappuccino tinged, exactly.
But I almost think with
that's
this.
That's just the NPC.
Exactly. I didn't have time to create that meme, Adam, but I was considering getting a scan of this front package and then basically superimposing a bunch of NPC Wojaks in there, because it would look kind of unchanged almost.
Yeah. Well, but anyway.
Did you post that on Twitter?
I will after this show, that's for sure.
Nice.
Matt W. says Skittles taste of Noahide.
Exactly.
Is it kosher approved? The Rebbe cereals definitely got to be kosher approved.
Absolutely.
Right?
100%.
Yeah.
All of General Mills is 2% of the population, but they get all of the food to be kosher so that they can tax it. They'll send rabbis there with magnifying glasses and play along with their nonsense kosher slaughter.
Yeah, they'll the crunch berries will be slaughtered humanely.
That's right.
That reminds me, Adam, I think we commented on a joint video jointly on a video about Ari Shafir.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it kind of speaks to what we're talking about here, some of the influence on our culture and our food. And by the way, there's an audio issue, Adam. You won't be able to hear this through the call-in line, but if you have like your computer nearby, you can hear what I'm about to play. But this was, I came across this on Twitter as you did. It's very spooky. Let me play this clip for listeners who haven't heard it yet.
So 6 years old. Big name. My dad's over there doing it. I stole a pen. So 6 years old, first grade. We're saying Copper Row. We're saying this prayer over and over again. All my sins, my gossip. Fucking eat it, sin chicken. I punched my sister. I stole a pencil. Eat it, sin chicken. You love it. Slurp it up. My dad's over there doing his Copper Road, and this chicken's just gobbling. Fucking covering this bitch in sins, It's like a bukkake of regret all over this fucking slut's face. God, come on, just Bible talk, you guys. That's all we're doing here. It's just regular Bible talk. We've done this before. And then we were done, and my dad was like, all right, symbolically, we're wiped clean of sin. I was like, oh, so cool. Can we go back inside? He goes, yeah, we can go back inside. But before we do, this chicken's got to pay for his crimes. What? Big Nate? What did Big Nate do? He goes, no, there's no one here by that name. First of all, I already told you that. Second of all, he knows what he did. He punched his sister. He stole that pencil. He gossiped. All my stuff. Look, man, Jews are excellent lawyers. And and this motherfucker's gonna hang for his crimes. Yeah, so he reached down in front of me, 6 years old. I was screaming for him not to. I was like, Dad, no, please. And he reached down, he grabbed this chicken by the neck, and, calm down. He didn't snap the neck. He picks it up by the neck and just starts like, oh yeah, way worse than whatever you guys pictured 5 seconds ago. Far, far more barbaric. Whatever you were thinking is like the way, I did not see it coming at all. You know who's more surprised? Big Nate. You should have heard like, what the fuck? That's how I die? You asked that chicken 8 minutes earlier, how are you gonna die? No way, it guesses correctly. Big Nate, how are you gonna die? Like, old age, I think, probably old age. These Jews treat me great, you know?
That is dark.
It's dark. Because I mean, it's couched in sort of a humorous. Aren't we Chosenites? Don't we have the sort of craziest customs? I mean, you know, who knows really why we do this? Of course, he's not going to go into the esoteric backdrop and how Yom Kippur is actually manifested and recapitulated in the entirety of Christian narrative and the creation of all these proto-Noahidic movements. And really, the sin atonement is indispensable to the entire Christian outlook, the entire Christian ethos. And notice how it's scape chicken in this sense, where they foist arbitrarily onto a innocent animal all of their bad things that they clearly are just allowed to do all of the time within their religion, because they can always just project all the bad things that they do onto a creature and dispose of that creature, and poof, there go all the bad things that happened. And so that's then exported into Christianity in the form of confession of sins, right? Except I think Christianity, maybe you don't need the animal part of it to pretend like you're forgiven by a Jewish superhero. But hey, we're gonna sin because that's just how we were created. Right?
Someone's commenting here. That whole special was basically a look at the absurdity of Judaism from the viewpoint of a Jew. And I haven't seen the whole special. That may be true, but it's still a window into this, which is what we're trying to highlight.
Right.
And Adam highlights.
Well, and it's a window, but it's not a door.
Credit.
Yeah. Go for it.
Oh, I give him credit for exposing the absurdity of their scapegoat belief, their scape chicken beliefs. And I think if he doesn't know already that Jesus is just a retelling of the theme of Yom Kippur, if he doesn't already know, it would just take a little bit of explanation to him, and he would get it right away. But Jesus is just the scapegoat and the sacrificial goat and the Passover lamb and all of this syncretic mix of all these messianic characters and different prophecies. And it's crazy. The basis of Christianity is that if you don't believe in the scapegoat vicarious atonement blood magic ritual and this God that wants you to worship him but shows no good proof that he exists, you're going to burn in hell forever.
Growing up a Catholic,
that literally is Christianity in a nutshell.
Growing up a Catholic, when I learned that we are supposed to actually believe in the transubstantiation, I was like blown away. I'm like, you're kidding me. For real?
It's actually his body and blood.
Wow. Like, you guys have lost it. Even as a kid, you're like, you guys are, this is a little too crazy.
Right. Yeah,
right.
it's very cultish.
And Dragons and thinking that it's real.
Very cultish. Santa Claus.
Right. It's almost like a more benign thing that would be like worship of Lord of the Rings, where everyone has like communion, and they pass out little breads and pretend that it's lambdas bread, and that they're gonna it's gonna fuel them through Mordor, and all this kind of stuff like that. That would be a more benign,
look, if we want to celebrate the miracle of our biology being able to convert things that we grow and cultivate into a higher existence for ourselves, a better health, right? That's one thing, but like, let's call it what it is instead of putting this, like, wrapping this crazy myth around it.
Right, this divine sort of cannibalistic ingestion of the god allows for the forgiveness to set in, and this is how we're able to sanctify our souls, because of course they're from the evil other side. They're from the Sitra Achtra, which is the satanic spheres, not the Nefesh HaElohit, right? That would be reserved for the special boys, as it were. So it's just fascinating, though, because go for it.
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh, just that it's interesting. Like Shafir, he is a funny guy, and you're right. He is kind of providing a little bit of a glimpse into the how shall we say absurdity that undergirds a lot of their culture. But at the same time, though, there is a little bit of this kind of like, ha ha ha, like normalization, sort of kitschy dismissal of really the kind of hardcore violence.
Haha, I have PTSD, right, but I can laugh about it, so you can laugh about it too.
Right. But in reality, like that's
shocking. It's a shocking admission that was part of his family tradition.
Yeah, but think of the millions of people that have never heard of this before, that are watching his stand-up special, that now learned about this practice that they're doing.
What do you think the state of the unveiling, the showing the man behind the curtain, you, as it pertains to your work, Adam? How do you think it's going? I mean, we have had a lot of, I would say, momentum in the infosphere with Kanye's glitch out, right, and everything. I had people who had never heard of Kanye before telling me about how bad of a guy he is, not knowing anything except for what the media just told him last week. But centered around his.
Kanye might have done more harm than good.
In what way?
Honestly,
elaborate.
The fact how they were able to, like, he won. He was awarded Anti-Semite of the Year, and all of the organizations, were fundraising and fear mongering about the things he said. I don't think he portrayed his side of the argument very well. It was all like, oh, you reject Jesus, and you guys need to find Jesus, and implying that they're satanic and these these stereotypical Christian tropes. It's just like playing the anti-Semitic Christian line. What?
Still very much Coke versus Pepsi, entrenched in that right-left.
Yeah. It's like you're not exposing the Jewish power if you're saying that Yeshua is the solution, and if you're worshiping the God of Israel and just mad at them that they won't accept their Messiah. Like, that's just playing into their whole script and their whole paradigm.
Well, right. You couldn't create a better form of opposition, essentially, because what
and to just teaming up, going on Alex Jones and making a big spectacle and wearing a mask and saying he loves Hitler and stuff. They just, that's not, that ultimately I think did more harm than good. And coincidentally, that was on Alex Jones's platform where he went and did that. So,
yeah, I see that argument. I see that argument for sure, because he's almost creating a caricature of himself to be assailed under the so-called noblesse oblige ideology of, oh, we need to stop this kind of hate, and oh, we can't have a decent society with these kind of thoughts circulating around on these large platforms. I mean, look at the guy. You know, it's just like, it's such a, seems so astroturfed. Like, it's sort of like an astroturfed
think about what he said too. What he said, and then how all the big brands canceled him. So that's like going to create a chilling effect for everybody else to not want to speak out, and that's going to be a warning to everybody that if you do this, your life's going to be ruined.
Yeah.
And you know, he said, "Oh, Adidas can't cancel me. I can say whatever I want," and he got canceled. So it's almost like it hits everybody's subconscious mind that, like, to scare everybody so that nobody will want to speak out. And if he would have approached it a little more balanced way, and, you know, didn't go, "I'm going DEFCON 3 on the Jewish people," like, is that really the most strategic, pragmatic thing that he could have said?
Well, at the same time, I mean, he basically admitted that he is a MK Ultra mind control victim, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
And so who knows when to believe he's really genuinely him?
Yeah, like when is he a wind-up doll and when is he being himself, you know? Because it seems like...
I know, the guy that's married to the Kardashians.
Right.
And Milo's on Telegram right now. He was his campaign manager for as long as his campaign lasted,
minute,
basically, because he's disappeared now. He's not... Yeah, it's fizzled out before it ever got started, it looks like. But Milo's on Telegram saying that Kanye is gay, basically.
Well, that's how a lot of people in his shoes starting out, that's how they get their first promotions and their big, you know, breaks is doing those sort of depraved, you know, kind of acts for the attention. Oh, it'll only take a couple minutes and then you're going to be super rich. You know, I mean, I really think that is a method for how they control celebrities, just like how they control the politicians and the
Chappelle has spoken to that as well. When he blew up real big, you know, they wanted to put him in movies and make him dress like a woman.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a really random, like, insertion of this scene that didn't make sense to him, and he spoke about it, you know, when he had that hiatus in Africa or whatever, and pointed at many other examples of famous black actors who were, you know, they either starred in movies as women or had these like weird appearances as women, and that's just like almost like a gang sign.
Mm-hmm. It's an initiation.
Yeah,
that was one of his issues. He also took big issue about just that they were like not letting him do the type of skits that he did want to do, and all the pressures and stuff.
Right. You mean ones that basically nullified racial division with racial humor?
Probably, yeah.
I mean, he did a lot of that.
Comedy Central, right? So that's Viacom. That's Sumner Redstone Viacom.
Yeah.
Right. And it was almost like that first season of Chappelle's show. Like he's got some pretty funny, kind of edgy for the time zingers, and real super edgy for today. But it's almost like they kind of threw him that bone, and then we're like, okay, now you got to start to do what we say.
Total line.
Now you got to start to dress up as a woman, or, you know, be in this sort of compromising character, etc. And it just seems like that's a part of the playbook, you know, recording and witnessing all of these sort of moral capitulations or these sort of ethical flubs that they want to see happen.
I'd say that definitely is a theme that people like to do in entertainment, is try to be funny and dress up and do weird shit. But like more of the Kanye thing you were talking about, like where they have some compromising information, because, you know, a Hollywood actor dressing up in a dress isn't going to ruin their career.
No.
But like, secrets about them being with underage kids or, same
Right.
sex stuff or weird stuff, that's how you could control people.
Private parties, private yachts, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's why
There's a lot of stuff been going on about Puff Daddy. Have you been seeing the Puff Daddy stuff about that? Like, that he would have like weird boy sessions or something?
It does not surprise me. Someone who is able to rise to his level of influence and stature and wealth and platinum albums and all this stuff. Again, you got to get through the gate, and usually the toll you have to pay is going buck wild and making a fool of yourself at one of these parties, and then meanwhile someone's got your number.
If middle class suburban Jews are doing helicopters with chickens on Yom Kippur, I mean, just imagine what some of these eccentric, wealthy MK Ultra victims are engaged in.
Exactly.
It really boggles the mind. Private jets. Yeah, someone's saying private jets, private islands. How about submarine installations? Like Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein. They were all into this
seafarer.
We're going to establish a sea community because it'll exist outside of any jurisdiction. And they reportedly, didn't they have like submarine installations between their islands? And they were, trying to like finance, quote unquote, submarine tours.
Yeah, that was the whole thing, is because they wanted to set up in international waters so they couldn't be enforced by any one nation.
Right. It wouldn't have to go to a court.
Mm-hmm. It had to be like a assemblage or a consortium.
It's almost like a sovereign citizen argument.
It is, but it's for nefarious
Yeah.
Purposes instead of like the obviously noble ones,
Right.
which we'll get into in this show. And I don't know. Part of me thinks that it's almost like the entertainment industry is pivoting in the same way that people have been acclimated over time to like reality TV. It's almost like entertainment. This is the whole Bernaysian project of merging the political class and the celebrity class together, so that essentially politics becomes this ceremonial show that people, hem and haw and get up in arms about, but ultimately it's ineffectual at disrupting any of the architecture.
Like
power.
the UK.
Well, sure. Yeah, the UK.
Pick your government, really. But the UK
government.
is a great example because everybody's like, oh, yeah, the royal family, they don't have any real power. It's just ceremonial. It's like, isn't that more alarming? Except they get to shut down London when they get married.
Right, and it's these kind of, spectacles. Bread and circuses, keeping people on this just distractionary plantation. Keeping people hypnotized to the people who are supposed to be, influential and celebrated and your leaders, and it's all just kind of astroturfed and sort of counterfeit and fake at the end of the day. Like, our culture has been fake for so long, just like our money. This was so just.
The Queen of England is the head of the Church of England.
Right.
Yes.
And that's the way it's been. All British monarchs have been the head of the church since the 1500s.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but we have separation of that, right, Adam?
The archbishops, the bishops, the prime minister. What?
We have separation of church and state, I thought. Not in England.
In America, we sort of do. We do in America. We're supposed to.
Supposed to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing.
Bush did stuff where he was like doing a bunch of funding of Christian groups, like really trying to send them a lot of money.
Oh yeah, Kufi and just all of the prosperity gospel televangelist, $1 billion charlatan industry. I mean, it is really. It's alarming, and I kind of wanted to piggyback off of that specific topic here, and ask you, you grew up Christian, Dave grew up Christian, I grew up Christian. We kind of saw the kind of idiotic aspects of the beliefs incrementally over time as we grew up. But it's taken kind of a long, it's taken a while to get to the point that we're at. And part of me is like, so really must every Christian ultimately go through this realization if they're really going to understand the nature of power in society and in the world? I would say that they really ought to challenge themselves and look at the evidence instead of just trying to engage in belief preservation, because that very belief preservation actually enables the talking points and the rhetoric about, oh, well, we wouldn't have any morality, and we have to presuppose that the God of Israel gave us all of the things that make us good people. And if we don't have that, and if we try to criticize that, we're nothing. We've got nothing left. We're going to be wiped away from the face of the earth. The only reason why people look up to America is because of our strong-held beliefs and our religious convictions. You hear that a lot. And, moralists like Jordan Peterson and the whole, demagogue mill today, the Daily Wire, ramp up that's happening. It's wild. Like you played a clip on one of your shows where, Shekel Piro is making like $200 million a year, and he had an angel investment of like nearly $5 million. Oh, I wonder who gave him that. I mean, and meanwhile, with that money, with that influence, he's been able to corral so many people who, just like 5 or 6 years ago, had some promise. They had some legitimate talking points. I'm thinking specifically of Jordan Peterson, but then, you kind of dig into his background a little bit. You see some of these sort of shady internationalist ties that he has, and also his academic work. Like if you look at Maps of Meaning, it's just totally philo-Semitic. I mean, every single supposedly grand intellectual reference that he makes is just filleting, whether it's Freud or whether it's Einstein or, just biblical genuflection. I mean, it's almost like he was just kind of laying in wait, and they mobilized him at the right time. They started to really inject a lot of cash and a lot of views his way, and we saw the schizoid issue culturally in how that occurred. I mean, he went on this huge benzo binge, and he was basically like out of the public eye for the better part of 2 years, and then he just like springs back on the scene, and he's just a 1,000% kosher apologist. If there was ever any ambiguity as to where his political ties are, that was just totally obviated. Starting about, really, it was a couple years ago during the whole shamdemic. I mean, he really kind of unfortunately showed how easy it is to parlay anyone with some intellectual clout, some academic standing, to just be a total shill. And I thought that was a pretty good black pill for a lot of people to witness that. And in a way, his capitulation to that whole system has a silver lining in that people are starting to see how easy it is for the establishment to just buy these people out and turn them into little soapbox minions. I mean, it's wild.
I remember seeing a clip of Jordan Peterson. Somebody asked him how much money he was making too, just like the Shapiro clip you're talking about.
Right.
And this is how I know that they're probably paying him tens of millions a year, because they offered something close to that to Crowder, who has a much smaller internet presence and following than Jordan Peterson. And Jordan Peterson was like, "Oh, he sells 20,000 books a month and does 10 sold out shows with he makes tens of thousands of dollars. He's making so much money, and he's always been kosher. Like he got famous because YouTube algorithms were promoting him, and his lectures about the Bible, about allegorically interpreting the Bible, and in his role, it seems it's been, or what he's done is he's actually turned a lot of people that were more secular, academic, intellectual oriented, and getting them to believe in religion and Christianity.
Absolutely.
I've seen lots of people comment on this, that he's turning that he's supposedly not a Christian, but he's turning all these people to Christianity.
Yeah, that's the
and
weird
then he
thing.
gets hired by Ben Shapiro, and then
I was just saying, yeah, that's the weird thing I noticed as well, Adam, is that he isn't really committal to any one or the other religion, but somehow he's inspired so many to get to dip their feet in the water.
He really has his own unique brand.
Go back
of
to faith,
Noahidism.
go back to Christianity. Yeah,
exactly.
He's such a fraud too.
Yeah.
People ask him "Oh, do you believe in God?" Remember the clip? And he goes, "Oh, well, what is you and what does believe mean?
How
do you define God?" It's just come on. He's like, "It'll take me 40 hours to explain that."
Oh,
please.
please.
If Jesus resurrected or not.
Totally. Yeah, and
then he cries to everybody.
Oh yeah,
cries all the time.
We've got a pretty fresh compilation.
He's got all these
to play.
videos on YouTube, crying about Jesus and stuff. He's ridiculous.
Well, he almost has his own unique brand of Noahidism, because he's not definitively one or the other branch. He's not doing the Andrew Tate thing and being like, "Oh yeah, Muslims are based," He's not doing that per se.
Well, Tate went from atheist to giving. I saw him say, "I give $20,000 to the Orthodox Church here in Romania every month because they're the mob and I want to do good in business." Basically, is what he said.
Well, didn't he also recently, right before he was arrested, wasn't he like, "Oh yeah, Muslims are actually, everyone needs to convert to Islam immediately. If you are a base Chad, you need to become Muslim now."
He did do a Muslim thing.
So it's almost like Peterson is not doing that rigmarole. He has his own unique moralist brand. So it's not specifically Christian, but it's a lot of the talking points are borrowed from Christian apologetics and polemics, but he packages it in this
Orthodox Christianity too.
Right, exactly. He packages it in this very seemingly academic, sort of intellectual, Dudgeon Heights,
intellectual pill pull.
Yes, and
word salads
and pearl clutching. The way that he pearl clutches
platitudes. My God,
the absolute, that is huge. He dresses up platitudes as principles. That's his whole. That's his biggest rhetorical piece of prowess, is that he's really good at defending platitudes and sort of simplistic talking points, and just giving it a bigger kind of grander moral veneer.
Ignore the construction.
That isn't really there. And I see him as part of this whole so-called intellectual dark web, this AstroTurf sort of demagogue influencer nexus, which doesn't it also include Russell Brand? I remember seeing him sitting down.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Russell Brand is part of that. He's kind of like the more lefty kind of Joe Rogan talking head. Like he's real good at going after corporate greed. He's really good at talking a big game around political corruption. But again,
Was he ever exposed the Judeo-Christian?
Never. It's dressed up in this sort of platitude, pearl clutching, Dudgeon Heights, sort of false moralism or superficial moralism. When there's actually not a lot of rigor to the arguments. There's not a lot of punch. There's not a lot of bite. It's a lot of bark and no bite. And that is the perfect type of distraction when you're trying to literally collapse an entire culture, an entire country, an entire economy. Is you need these sublimations. You need these outlets and these channels to sort of play leader, play the Pied Piper. It's the whole Pied Piper effect, and it's being played very.
It's very sophisticated.
Very sophisticated operation because it's so many kind of disparate viewpoints and unique kind of rhetorical articulations.
I think you have genuine unwitting participants in it as well.
Totally.
They are compartmentalized and sequestered into their own bubble, and they are influenced almost subconsciously to carry out a propaganda operation. And the big question, I think, politically, media-wise, is who is conscious of it and who is not. Because at least with the unconscious people, there's some hope you might be able to get through to them and make them realize what they're really involved in propagating. The conscious people, I mean, what do we do with those people?
Right. And that dovetails in with this broader question of like, how do we turn or how do we garner more people within our ranks, basically? How is it especially since so many of them who would be sympathetic to a lot of these purviews and investigations are themselves Christian. So that there is a kind of like, we're going to need to sort of ally in some way over time with this this group consciousness, I guess. But maybe it's important to sort of strip away or erode some of these attachments and allegiances to these religious frameworks, to the whole mythos behind the patriarchs and the prophecies and, the resurrection and the God-men. And, it's kind of like a maturation process or something where we have to encourage that, people look at the evidence, really digest it over time, and kind of realize that as long as you're still, paying your tithes and listening, to the preacher and thinking that your entire identity and your worthwhileness as a human being is bound up with your identity of being affiliated with a church or a Christian belief system of one variety of or another. There's 30,000 of them or something in terms of individual denominations and congregational churches and stuff. So it's not to say that you can't find some good, like-minded, well-intentioned people in those areas. You definitely can. The difficulty I've had is basically trying to, again, dehypnotize some of the attachments and allegiances to the belief structures while still retaining the positive core of fellowship. Because I think that fellowship is really the number one value that people really look for in a church or a religious community. Like they want to have an immediate point of relation with lots of people so that they can, have nice relations with people. But at the end of the day, they're still supporting a kind of politically expedient, illusory belief system that is totally easy to manipulate. And I think that's the part where it's like a bridge too far. Like a lot of people will just kind of tune out and be like, "Oh no, well I've got an individual relationship with Jesus, and I'm not going to let go of that relationship. He is the only worthwhile relationship I really have, and all these other, people that I meet at church, they're just ancillary to that relationship that I have with Jesus." And it's like, that person could have like 90% else correct, and be very much against all of the current paradigm, and have perhaps even some good policies and solutions, but they're still bound up within this kind of trauma-based mind control system that is a spiritual deception. And how do you see mass traction occurring where there's a mass apostasy essentially from from people identifying as Christian to being more like maybe spiritually open still and wanting to have spiritual fellowship and community with people, but kind of realizing that they're out of their trainer pants. They have to sort of grow up and realize that maybe these various beliefs that they've had aren't actually really serving them that much. Like, what do you think about that?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what your question is.
Well, the question is,
but I do agree. I think fellowship is important to people.
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking is, I hear some people say that, oh, what are you going to replace it with, right? This is such a huge talking point amongst sort of the nationalist types, the Keith Woods, the Joel Davis, Mark Collette, these types. Their whole thing is, well, we need to retain some kind of fundamental Christian identity within the West, or else, we're just going to be completely run over by, the Marxists or, what have you. And I don't know, part of me is like, do we really need to salvage that? Because we have that already, and we're being waylaid right now. It hasn't provided any defense against the most pressing assaults and attacks on our sovereignty. So why would we want to retain this one piece of the puzzle that, try as we may, it may just not be a piece that's in the right puzzle set? It's a puzzle piece for folks that herald from the monotheistic Abrahamic tradition. That's a big puzzle piece for them, that we need people to worship, this foreign god that's rooted in Yahwism and, atonement sacrifice and, chosenite religiosity. That's a puzzle piece for them, but it's not actually it's not something that's actually serving the causes that need to be championed probably the most, which is self-determination, guys. Like, if you're maintaining a Christian identity, that's not genuine sovereign self-determination. You're acquiescing and you're surrendering fealty to a system that theologically doesn't actually benefit the West going forward. And like, what do you say to those types that are like, oh, well, we still need the Christian base, and we still need to ally with them, and we can sort out the details later, basically. The kind of realpolitik approach to building a coalition against the current establishment and the current paradigm. What do you say to those types?
We can work together with Christians on certain things, but there's going to be a lot of things because of their religion and their beliefs that they have that they, we're not going to see eye to eye. We're not going to respond to the left in the same way. And the response from the right and Christianity, it hasn't, fared so well against the degeneracy of the left. And they said, oh, well, we need more Christianity. They want to salvage Christianity, even though it's not true, just to save us from the left. I think there's better arguments to make against the left that aren't biblically based. And that, from this supposed moral God, this idea that we wouldn't have morals or know how to behave without the God of Israel and his 10 commandments and the fear that we'll burn in hell if we do bad things. It's degrading to say that Christianity built civilization and we wouldn't have nice buildings or civilization or be able to defend ourselves from foreign armies without the Bible and the Hebrew Torah and these ancient fairy tales. I think it's absurd. There's no point in salvaging it. It's a failure. It's a lie. It's always been set up to be a subversion and a deception. And the people that are saying that our only hope is to just keep believing in the King of the Jews and the Torah Messiah. That's our only hope, our only chance. That's nihilism.
Xavier, do you want to share with Adam some of the conversations you've had with chat NPC on this subject?
Well, I do have more. I did post one last night, and I believe you at the end of your episode or your stream last night, you gave it a shout out where it talks about how Christianity was basically used. It was imposed on the peoples of Europe through colonization and conversion efforts, often at the expense of the traditional spiritual and cultural practices of the European native peoples. And I just love for you to expand more on that. I mean, it's almost like this is a whole other separate historical set of grievances against the Judeo plantation that most people who identify as Christians have just no historical purview about. Like, they don't even think twice that, oh yeah, I'm a Western or like a American or European person. That means that I owe a debt psychologically or spiritually to the Christian tradition. But in reality, it's actually kind of a Johnny-come-lately belief structure. So-called Europeans were building civilizations and having all sorts of sophisticated sets of laws and high-order intellectual debate and high-trust societies long before there was any interface with this Middle Eastern persuasion. And they want to turn around and rewrite history and say, oh, we're just a bunch of pig-chasing barbarians. We didn't have anything until we had the Torah messianism and the resurrection and ascension, just like Elijah. And, we have our Christ the King, just like Joshua, and we've got the man behind the throne, the man upstairs. That's like Joseph. It's this high priest archetype, and in reality, like for example, like Odin worship, that probably goes back like at least 5,000 or 6,000 years. Long before even the Vikings called it Odin. That this idea that we can't form ethical systems of comportment without this savior complex, I think is just it's one of the most successful rewrites that they've done to the West and to the cultures within it. And man, it's just it's wild and alarming at the end of the day that people will just rally to defend this kind of foreign ideology in the form of what they think as the only true spirituality, without them really having any purview about really much any other tradition. And most of the time, a lot of Christians I talk to, they don't know crap about the Bible. They don't really know a lot of what's in it. They don't really know the contradictions, and they don't really know a lot of the passages that make you scratch your head and say, is really God all about love? Like, this like whole book called Leviticus doesn't really say, you know, and even Revelation, you know, in the New Testament, it's like, is this a really loving God? Like, there's only going to be 144,000, you know, spiritual eunuchs left at the end of the time. Like, man, that's like a 99.99999, you know, genocide. Is this kind of what people are preserving at the end of the day? Is this kind of backdoor apocalyptic resignation psychologically? That's almost like the last, the sharpest part of the hook in a lot of ways that's in the back of people's minds as to why they don't want to abandon Christianity, is this whole like mind fuckery of like Pascal's wager. You know, it's like it's better to just be a slave of Israel, and if there is a God, you know, after death, then he'll reward you, and that's the better course of action than being wrong after death and having led your life just like a self-determined individual, you know. And if you talk to a lot of these Christian apologists, they'll dress up Pascal's wager in one form or another to make it seem like it would be absurd to stop believing in this because we don't know what happens after death. Therefore, we have to sort of pay tribute to the pre-existing spiritual system that projects morality unto us and gives us our sense of existential merit, right? So Pascal's wager, in your upcoming debate on Saturday, I would not be surprised to hear your opponent bring some form or another of this kind of argument up. And how do you respond to it, I guess, is my question. I have my thoughts about it, but I kind of want to see how you respond to this idea of Pascal's wager. That human beings wager with their lives that God either exists or does not. And it's the idea that a rational person should live as though God exists. And again, I think that Jordan Peterson, his whole MO right now is repackaging Pascal's wager for a secular audience to sort of scare them into believing in a God of Israel afterlife. So what do you think about this type of philosophical kind of sleight of hand being mobilized?
I've seen people argue Pascal's wager a million times, and I've seen it debunked a million times.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that, number one, usually what the debunkers will say is that this is assuming that the God of Israel is the one true God, because there could be all these other gods that you're taking a risk believing in Yahweh is who they're referring to, who Pascal was referring to, and but you could get that wrong, and it could be Zeus could be the real god or something. So there's that, and also the idea that you're going to hedge your bets, like just in order to save yourself from hell. You don't really believe, but you're going to believe. So God's, at the pearly gates and deciding if you get in or not. And he goes, oh, well, this guy hedged his bets, and he believed just to, not because he really believed and because he wanted to be a slave and worship, but because he was hedging his bets. But I don't think the guy that I'm going to debate is going to bring that up. I've been watching several of his debates that he's been doing with some top atheists, and he hasn't brought it up yet. But
interesting.
He talks about the theological argument, which is like that the creation has to have a creator, and he talks about the transcendental argument that we wouldn't have these transcendental categories if it weren't for a divine mind. And he tries to attack that we don't know how the universe was created or how life started, but I'm not going to get into all that stuff with him. I'm going to hammer him on how delusional and deceptive Christianity is, and how use the scripture to show what it is.
So kind of he takes on the whole sort of Jay Dyer approach, the Van Til's apologetic, where if you can think of goodness and evil, that's because you were already preconditioned to associate those ideas with some kind of religious system. So it's impossible to have a concept of good or evil, benefit or detriment, without the idea of a God, right? That whole ipse dixit fallacy. Because what presuppositional apologetics do is they just declare at the outset that the existence of God is real. Without ever substantiating any evidence that would suggest such a presupposition would have any merit. So I call it an ipse dixit fallacy, because if you look that fallacy up, it means basically because he said so. It's a because he said so fallacy, ipse dixit. And yeah, he said it himself. Is an assertion without proof or a dogmatic expression of opinion. The fallacy of defending a proposition by baldly asserting that this is just how it is distorts the argument by opting out of it entirely. The claimant declares an issue to be intrinsic and not changeable, and has just announced himself at the beginning of the argument to be the victor. That's not an argument. It's a fallacy. So that's how I like to go after presuppositionalism, is that it's founded on an ipse dixit fallacy, and there's no evidentiary merit to uphold such a presupposition. And it sounds like you'll probably make some mincemeat of him, because if he's going to rest on the Aquinas and Van Til and all these kind of.
Well, we're not debating God. We're debating, is Christianity a deception? Is what he agreed to.
Okay, so he's probably gonna bring up the apologetics pertaining to the historicity, Tacitus and Philo, and
he'll probably say, the apostles would have never died for a lie. That's probably what he'll say. That'll be the best he comes up with. But yeah, they definitely, the presuppositional argument definitely does seem like ipse dixit. It's just saying, like, well, the only way to have 1 + 1 = 2, and to know good and bad, and to have mathematical truths and all these things is you have to have a God to account for them. But they don't ever prove that you have to have a God. It's also begging the question, because you're putting your premise in the argument, saying The only way that you can have these transcendentals that exist is to have God, thus God.
Right.
So it's like that. When that's your only proof, is saying that it has to be that way, and they'll say you can't have truth. How do you know that? What do you base that on? What's your grounding? What's your justification for that? And so all of those things are different ways of saying that you can't be right unless you admit that my God is real. Basically what the argument is. It's like a circular reasoning.
My first exposure to that was in college. For one of my courses, I had to attend one of several different lectures that were taking place on campus. And I chose this one where it was this guy arguing for creationism as, described in the Bible. And he gave his lecture, and then there was a period of time where you could basically debate him and ask him any question. And every single question that was asked, he would always preface his answer with, as described in the historical book of the Bible. So he was basically saying, I have already come to this understanding that it is a historical book and I can read it as such. Therefore, yada, 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 whatever his argument was, it was based on that foundation. And that, to me, that's ipse dixit writ large, presuppositional. You have to basically bring yourself to that level of confidence in the source material, right? But if you have any sort of doubt about the translations or, the motives behind its writing to begin with, I mean, writing itself back then, if we even believe what the history books tell us, was a very rare activity. So a very privileged, certain class of person was even going to be writing a thing, let alone interpreting and translating and that sort of. So it's very cloudy, and you bring any of that up, it's just like wearing ignorance as a shield, because as described in the historical book of the Bible, even presupposes that the Bible is a historical book in his own belief system. So he was impenetrable, in his mind, he won the debate, so right. it was quite a spectacle.
And I think that this is one of the bigger problems psychologically, philosophically going forward, is how are we going to get people to see the extent of the control grid if they're trying to, staunchly defend and die on the hill of one corner of the control grid without seeing the bigger picture. And I think that Christianity produces a kind of doormat psychology over time where you can't think outside of being a servant to something greater than yourself, and thereby, how are you ever gonna argue for what benefits you, or how are you ever gonna have a frame of reference for the betterment of society if all of your individual worth is predetermined ahead of time to be dust on the scale? Essentially, you're just condensation on the bucket. What God giveth, God can take it away. It creates a kind of hyper humility that is counterproductive if you're advocating for any kind of political policy change, if you're advocating for any kind of cultural defense, anything. It's a way of like anesthetizing the believer into rooting for his own capitulation, rooting for his own subjugation as a virtue, because that's ultimately what Jesus tells people to do. Go, surrender all your property, and if your love for me has to surpass your children and your family and everyone who's ever,
Jesus died for your sins, except he didn't die.
Oh, dude, Did you?
I saw that meme on
That
Instagram.
meme
I
is
didn't
so
retweet it
good.
or anything, but yeah,
That is
you
so
get the point.
good. It's so good because it's like at the end of the day,
He had a bad weekend.
you had a bad weekend, right. So it's like actually he just gave up his
And now
weekend for you.
now he's ruling heaven. It's like, oh man, I really owe you now.
Yeah, that's a good line of attack, I think, because yeah, if he already knew ahead of time that he was gonna die and experience this in this
What did he
manner,
really sacrifice?
What did he really sacrifice? If it was all just a giant divine dramaturgy that was scripted ahead of time, waiting to happen, where's actually the divine recompense for someone to believe in that? Like, I don't see it.
And it's like, what's the point of the sacrifice, of the crucifixion, if it's like this happened supposedly 2,000 years ago, and he's dying for our sins that I'm not even born until 2,000 years later, sins that I haven't even committed yet, and then I'm alive. People are alive today. They're still sinning, so they have to believe in him in order to be saved. It's not the actual sacrifice that does the saving of the sins. It's the believing that he died for your sins is what actually saves your sins.
And
so
then,
it's just
yeah.
And you have to believe in all this, and you have to believe in the power of Bible Torah prophecy. Otherwise, you're going to burn forever, because he loves you and because he calls you the dust on the scale and drops in the bucket and says you're nothing. And Jesus compares us to dogs getting scraps on the table of the chosenness. And this is the God you want to worship, one that says you're a broken vessel and you're born evil, and without him and the atonement sacrifice, you're destined for hell. It's all so degrading, self-loathing. It makes excuses for people to be evil. It makes people be able to sin and think they can just kill a goat or just believe in Jesus or just go to confession or say a prayer and they're forgiven.
I remember my Catholic church at one point, they forbade the watching of the movie Dogma. And I guess in the movie there's some reference to walking under this particular arch and being forgiven of sins, and they made a mockery of it, of course. And I just found it very ironic that they would essentially censor or ban a movie, a fictional, a Hollywood movie called Dogma, and at the same time not see how they are enforcing a certain dogma. It's almost like they fell into the trap, or maybe they're working for the same people, and that was like kind of one of those many wake-up calls I'm sure you've had, Adam, in your trajectory, where it's like a head scratcher, and I remember after church we go to Harris Teeter and get jelly donuts, and we would ask certain questions, and certain questions would get the answer, well, that's the mystery of our faith. And I'm just like, another head scratcher.
Right. And I guess on one level,
hold on. I have never heard of this movie before.
Oh, really? Dogma?
I've never heard of this
you've
movie.
never seen that one?
All of these.
That one's funny. That one's funny.
No.
You should see it.
I'm gonna rent this tonight.
Yeah,
you'll love it. I can't wait to see the clips you make on it.
Absolutely, dude. Yeah, you would definitely get a kick out of it. It's very irreverent. You got like Matt Damon and Ben Affleck in it. Yeah, it's been a long time since I saw
Alanis Morissette.
Alanis Morissette. Yeah. Bringing in the
you'll love it.
Kabbalistic Shekinah reference there, because if you look at the director and the producer there, you'll see what maybe
Kevin
some
Smith.
Adam Smith, yeah. Yeah,
That's Kevin Smith.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Scott
that's right.
Moiser.
Yep. It's funny. It's got a lot of good.
Again, it was on the bulletin board coming out of the Catholic Church I was going to at the time. Forbade.
That's right. I kind of remember when it first came out, there was a lot of, again, this sort of pearl clutching and, oh my gosh, our society's going down the tubes because Christianity is being dissed. It's being insulted, and, but like, meanwhile, since that movie came out, televangelist proceeds have gone up like, 1,000% or something. So, no, it little drops in the bucket like this, it ends up just being kind of funny comedy. I don't even know if it, would get that good of a reception, today. They may not really allow the release of this kind of material now. I think that it's funny that the Catholic element there was probably the most triggered.
It just kind of assaulted the logic. Like,
What's weird is this is a time when I was an age when I would like go to and see like every movie at the movie theaters, and I can't believe that this one never caught my eye.
Really? Yeah, I remember when it came out, I was 14, 15 or something. Yeah.
I felt like the church's response was sort of indicating a broader culture of anti-intellectualism. Like, I can't watch a movie and decide for myself. If the material I'm getting in church is so, imbuing of conviction, why can't I watch this movie and decide for myself? It's enforcing a dogma, which is the great irony of it.
Well,
I grew up Christian, but I never remember hearing like any Christian, don't watch this movie, this is blasphemy or black magic or whatever. What I remember always being fear-mongered about was the Ouija boards.
Yeah.
That was like a big deal.
Yeah. Egregore casting. Meanwhile, Christianity is an egregore casting religion as well. What do you think, like, the rosary and like the Our Fathers and all that stuff is? You're reciting a mantra. You're reciting a phrase or a bit of language that essentially connects you with something that it's like a higher thought form. And really, pretty much all religions accord to the idea of homage or fealty to egregore magic or summoning practices, theurgy, right? Doing God's work, right? In what that really means is you're working on being a subset of God. You're working on basically being fuel or food for this God that you're worshiping. And so I've always found it interesting to use this lens of summoning magic and egregore to sort of guide my way through the Bible. And if you really look at it, the whole biblical narrative is really a blood libel egregore. It's a prophecy and a series of foretellings and lessons and parables that refer to this basically perpetual hegemony that is going to eventually exist under the auspice of mandated monotheistic theocratic rule. And people who want to defend that as essential for the continuance of Western society, I mean, it's just baffling. at the end of the day, because I think a lot of it is ignorance, but I think a lot of it is just belief preservation. It's just a sort of cognitive shutdown mechanism. I mean, religion is there to more or less give you a sense of purpose, give you a sense to be, give you a sense of meaning, because otherwise, why the hell do you exist anyway? You know, so I think that there's a hidden misanthropic core to a lot, perhaps all of the monotheistic religions, because it's ultimately about humans in their natural state are defective and bad, and we secretly want to be united or, you know, emboldened to be gods, but we can't have a multiplicity of gods, because that means that people could just make up whatever belief they wanted, and heaven forbid, you know, we've got to have all people circle their wagons around this monolith, this monopoly, this monolatry.
You need a dictator God, the one and only God.
Yes.
The one world religion God that doesn't get along with any compete. Nobody else can speak for God but his chosen people, the nation of priests. And that was their agenda, and that was their goal, and they've greatly accomplished that, and it's been a great success. Yahweh and the Torah has been an incredible success.
So do you see, and we sort of got into this kernel in the last episode, around like mythicism, and I think it increasingly people can be persuaded along the lines of, look, beliefs really aren't a form of knowledge, right? I think if you pushed most Christians on that, they would probably agree. I know at least the Christians I talk to, they have enough rationality to recognize that the demonstrability of their faith isn't, it's not as easy as they'd like it to be. For people who are like unbelievers or people who don't believe, there's like a hidden insecurity that, oh, maybe that person doesn't believe in Jesus for a good reason. You know, I think that there is a kind of hidden fear there, where if you're able to sort of foster that curiosity about their own belief system, usually they can unravel it for themselves. And I speak from experience in that the more I dove into like the esoteric secrets of like all these world religions, I began to realize, wow, this really kind of is the old PR to a great extent. It really is the old form of public relations, and how the elite have preserved their ability to have disproportionate power and influence over large groups of people. And that it is, it's like the original, religion is the original public relations to a great extent. And dogma is a sort of platitude generator. You know, the more you insist upon a dogmatic purview, the easier it is going to be to come up with, you know, one-liners and platitudes and truisms to sort of gallop your argument forward for why people need to believe. But then if you excavate all of those platitudes, you realize there's actually not quite as much logical, epistemological, principled knowledge behind any of it. Again, it goes back to what we were talking about before about presuppositionalism. It's really just power of suggestion. You know, people just take it in, and the more it's repeated, and the more there's positive reinforcement around the digestion of the beliefs and the allegiance to the beliefs, the more they double down on the belief psychologically. So I do find that is very, it's very difficult to find someone that's able to sort of do that on their own without having sort of like a slew of sleepless nights as the result of like a heated conversation or something with a non Abrahamist and or non-Christian, non-Judeo, non-monotheistic kind of agnosticism. And I would sort of classify myself as a counter-theist in the sense that I think that just the allegiance that people have to theism isn't grounded in very good consciousness. It isn't grounded in very good arguments. And again, it's just power of suggestion and following these egregores and being food for these collective thought formations unwittingly and unknowingly, not really knowing what you're serving or believing in. And I think that's true beyond religion too. I mean, if you look at people's political affiliations, it's that way too. Look the other way when it's your guy, obviously engaging in some form of corruption. But if it's the, again, the evil other side, the right or the left, it's all their fault. And I think that knee-jerk reactionism and that sort of low-resolution opposition is basically the result of these theistic belief systems. I don't think people would be as easily deceived or as easily manipulated in this control dialectic and this duopoly matrix if they weren't as easily swayed and persuaded on these religious lines. So I don't know what do you think about that take? Like, is there
being religious almost conditions people to accept things without evidence? That's what faith is. The virtue that Christianity puts on faith, the story of doubting Thomas, where it says it's better to believe when you have not seen. So it's teaching you to have faith because there's no proof for this God of theirs. They have to do that, and which it kind of brings it back. And faith is definitely, in belief, is different than knowledge. It's belief is the lack of knowledge, essentially, like I just saw Christ Dub say in the chat. And this is what kind of goes back to the transcendental argument too, where it's funny that you have to have these intellectuals, these religious theologians explain to you, all the simple-minded people out there, this great proof for God that just coincidentally is not anywhere in the Bible, and in fact was kind of incorporated from some other non-Abrahamic pagan philosophers. And it's like, oh, they have this transcendent God, and that's how we have these moral absolutes and absolute truths and stuff. And it's like, okay, but what was the Bible even for then? If we are already born with these transcendental knowing right from wrong, why did we need the Ten Commandments to tell us what's right and wrong?
Yeah,
and there's a bunch of other issues transcendental too.
Yeah, I mean,
I pity the person that tries to bring that up. It'll just be a filibuster and a waste of time, though. There's more important. The burden's on them anyway. It's all a shift of the burden that we shouldn't even let them get into that trap and that trick.
And in terms of just going back to the Skittles from earlier on in the show, this DEI, this diversity, equity, and inclusion, euphemistic masquerade for what is basically anti-merit and pro-reparation psychology. I mean, equity, right? They like to defend the idea that oh, it's giving someone, you know, a leg up, basically. And that there's a equality of opportunity instead of equality of outcome. And I got to thinking about this. I was like, wait, that's totally ridiculous. Opportunities are outcomes in themselves. There is no opportunity that you can take that isn't itself the result of another chain of events and outcomes.
No action is an action.
So, you know, and then diversity, of course, you know, we all know what that means. And inclusion, it's actually hyper-exclusivity. Only these criteria, if they're matched in this way, shape, and form, count as justiciable, as the beacon of progress, right? So, I mean, where do you think it's all going ultimately, economically? Because I see it as just a total sabotage of commonsensical economic structuring. I mean, what's the end game of the diversity, equity, and inclusion putsch? What do you think?
You know, they want a mixed world. They want more. You know, I just saw a clip from World Economic Forum, and it was Al Gore, and he's talking about the climate crisis is going to cause so many billions of, you know, climate immigration, and it's going to break our systems, and that's what's going to happen. It is going to financially destroy, almost like what is it, Cloward and Piven.
Mm-hmm.
And already, what are we in, 30 trillion debt, and Russia and China and India are doing their BRICS, and you know, if they leave the petrodollar and the dollar falls and they call in the debt, you know, China calls in the debt or whatever, they're going to be able to financially collapse this. But, you know, it'll probably be escalated with maybe more plagues, more shutdowns,
more derailments,
you know, more consolidation, more inequality.
Yeah, more derailments, more industrial sabotage.
More poison and pollution. Yep.
So, I mean...
Yeah, more hunger, higher taxes. It's all just going to start swirling faster and faster down the drain, I think. The birth pangs, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse for Edom.
And so do you think that there's a way of sort of turning the tables at this point? Do you think that there's a possibility of like a such a radical, for example, cultural exodus from this basically apocalyptic paradigm to where people just, you know, hell, that they would rather, you know, live in the woods on subsistence means and barter and reduce their standard of living so drastically so they don't actually have to be a part of the system. Like, do you think that it's going to get to that point for like a critical mass of people? And if that is the case, like, how is it going to be politically opportunized? Like, how is the elite going to stop people from just going mass boycott? Because I mean, it seems to me like that could be a big monkey wrench in this apocalyptic script. Is if there really was a mass traction divestment and a total boycott of these various industries that are involved with the collapse of America, you know, collapse of Edom. Do you think that there is the possibility to basically develop traction in that way, to just encourage people to sort of, you know, de-domesticate, basically? Like, do you think that there's a like an autarky type revolution that could achieve, you know, critical mass? because something has to happen,
I
right?
don't know about certainly there'll be some people that will do that as things get worse, but everybody's so dependent on the system that if the system falls, some people that are prepared, very few people that are prepared, everybody else will be hungry, and they'll be getting in the lines, and they'll be completely dependent on the people that control the government. They'll capitalize it and be screwed. A lot of people will be screwed. I mean, it could get really bad.
Yeah.
We've had it so good for so long. It's almost like the higher they go, the worse they fall.
Mm.
I'm pretty sure I've even seen rabbis talking about that. That's what's going to happen to Edom and Esau. They're going to rise up the most, but then they're going to be crushed the worst.
Mm. Mm. So do you you live out on the West Coast, right? Like you're in California. Have you thought about like strategic relocation? I don't. You might not be in as rough of an area, but I mean, do you see yourself, regardless of how bad things get, like staying in the California area?
Well, I've thought about getting a bunker somewhere out in the middle of the woods or on a mountain or, another country, but, there's my wife's family around, and I don't know exactly where to go, and don't really, have the money to go just pick up and leave and start over. It all sounds
right.
Maybe if things start to get a little worse in a few years, I'll decide to try to make a move. But all I can do now, right, pretty much, is just make sure to have a good little storage of water and canned foods, just in case. After COVID happened and how quick all of the shelves were empty, it really shows how fragile our supply chain is in the industry.
Totally. That's a very good point, because it's all based on this, just on time model, where there's only 72 hours or 3 days worth of supply at any given time at any given location, and if those supplies are ransacked and there's not some close by warehouse or backup store, and they're relying on all these huge, internationally connected supply chains, and those are in tumult, then the store is basically empty. The store is completely defunct. It's like anti-resilient, and it seems that like it's almost like the economy has been crafted that way deliberately in order for it to be more easily collapsed, so as to accord to their prophecies and their narrative going forward. Because if you look at the
famine, plague, chaos, and wars.
Yeah, I mean,
isn't it sad that that's what these prophecies are for? Like, we couldn't just have not all of that stuff. How about a future religion of no wars and not all these birth pangs and the Messiah and all this stuff? It's all the fact that this is what it says, and so many Christians and even Muslims and rabbis, of course, have their own end times prophecies that all of this has to come about, and this is God's plan. It's like they'll at the very least they'll sit back and let it happen, if not actively engage in trying to make it happen.
Right. So I guess a question for me, Adam. This is Dave. Dave, we know that people harbor these end times prophecies, which they really want to self-fulfill. But it is hard to deny that we seem, at least it feels like to me, that we are reaching some sort of major inflection point. So my question to you is, what is the end times to you? Is it just a myth, relic of these antiquated Abrahamic derivatives, or what is it to you?
Yeah, I think it's a myth. I think it's a script and a blueprint that they're going to engineer or just manifest by believing it. And did you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
You're a bit low,
You're
but yes.
Slightly lower volume.
Okay, sorry. No, I tried to put
there
in
you
some
go.
different
Better.
headphones, and apparently it didn't work. So yeah, no, I think it's the script, the end time script that they want to happen. I don't think it's real. I don't think it's.
How do you see that? How do you see that
something doesn't have to be
materializing?
real.
Like a lot of people have been talking about like the fake alien invasion theory. We've talked about the holographic asteroid strike, which is actually carried out with kinetic military weapons for mass genocide and sort of corralling the remaining surviving gray Skittles,
Right.
you know, to be enslaved. What do you what kind of I'm not asking for you to commit to one or the other. I'm just curious what is top of mind as far as like that final end times play, that Gog Magog showdown.
Yeah, I can see, hate speech laws intensifying, war, Gog and Magog with Russia and Ukraine, Iran and Israel, China and America and Taiwan, and we're gonna have what it calls for.
Yeah. What did you
what
think
the
about?
religious fanatic wants to happen? Plagues, famine, war, the destruction of Edom, which is Christianity in the West. Hate speech laws. You won't be able to, blasphemy, Noahide laws, Noahide expanded.
What did you think about
what I
the
think
Chinese spy balloon, and then that crazy earthquake in Syria?
It's wild.
I mean, to me, that's like a little that's like an end time show. You know, we were all watching this balloon on TV, and then all
I
sorts.
wouldn't say a balloon is end time. I don't know if I'd agree with that.
Well, it was end times for all those people in Syria that suffered the earthquake. Some people have.
Yeah, I mean, earthquakes always happen. Right? They do think that. I'm pretty sure earthquakes are a part of their prophecies, but I mean, I wouldn't say that one specifically is like a prophecy fulfillment. There's always been nasty earthquakes.
Well, not only do people tell themselves that it is, especially when they're in that scenario and they have that presupposition about the end times, but I did find the Chinese balloon sort of like another one of those mass distractions. And over here, you have had government leaders accuse the American government of conducting kinetic weather warfare. And you look at some of the very odd, almost spontaneous combustions here in the U.S. And we're all watching this balloon on TV, and I'm sitting there wondering, you have people with the means of conducting these sorts of catastrophic, war powers, and then at the same time they're the same people in control of the media, and they're just like distracting us from this whole thing, and at least for the people there, it's their end times, and I see this all escalating massively. The Ohio situation and the government response to that. I mean, I know you. I think I know that you believe that sort of the world is a stage. So I can't necessarily rule out some of these so-called natural disasters. Like we talked about the asteroid briefly earlier. We can't sort of rule out those sorts of conclusions.
Right, the idea that there could be new exotic.
First, hold on.
Yeah.
I looked it up because I wanted to make sure. I just wanted to see exactly what it said about the earthquakes and the end times. Here's Luke 21, 9-13. Okay, because the ADL will call me an anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist when I say this is what the prophecies are. This is what all the religious people that are in the positions of power on the world, believe has to happen. Listen what it says. When you hear of wars and uprisings, do not be afraid. These things must happen first. So they must happen, the wars, but the end will not come right away. Then he said to them, nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes, famines, pestilences, disease in various places, and fearful events and great signs from heaven. But before all this, they will seize you and persecute you, meaning the Christians. They will hand you over to the synagogues and put you in prison, and you will be brought before kings and governors, and all on account of my name, the Noahide courts for believing in the divinity of Jesus. And so you will bear testimony of me. That's what the end time.
Don't you think they're just like kind of telling you what they're going to do?
Yeah.
Kind of telling you what they're telling
exactly.
you. Yeah.
Seize you and persecute you. And hands you over to the synagogue. So once the destruction of Christianity comes, the Christians are going to go, this is part of the plan. This is what is supposed to happen. We're supposed to lose. Oh, by losing, we're winning. Because God wants us to be destroyed in a big war. In Revelation says that the people that believe in Jesus will be decapitated also.
Wow.
Great plan. Thanks God.
Well, and it's pretty amazing though, because it's basically like a kind of a kamikaze attack a little bit. Board the civilization that you want to destroy in a plane, and the pilot who's supposed to be piloting the plane is telling all the passengers, look, long before all of y'all got in this plane, I was going to wreck this plane. And here's y'all's chance to finally join the real world after you die. Here we go. Down into the ground. And that seems to be kind of the purpose of Christianity against so-called the seed of Amalek, right? That it's designed to vacuum up or gobble up all the souls that aren't ultimately worthy to the world to come, and basically crash them into the ground and tell them all along that it's amazing. It's the best opportunity ever. It is the ultimate reality, and you're going to be a better person once you're dead, basically. I mean, isn't that kind of the psychology that people are internalizing with Christianity? Is I'm going to be a better person when I die.
Prophecy, predictive programming, conditioning you for your destruction and your ultimate demise.
So it's a tool that's designed to be used and then discarded, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah, Christianity was created to serve a purpose, to play the Esau role in the 2,000-year period, and then to be, it's based on lies, it's built on lies, it's built on fake prophecy deception. The whole idea of the Trinity is irrational, with the three being one, and the whole thing is they're going to pull the rug out from under it. And you can already see this happening now with Christianity. There's a big push now to say, that Jesus never claimed to be God, and that was just added in later, so that'll make it more Unitarian and more Noahide kosher approved. And also they're saying, all the prophecies and all the stories of the gospel is all fake, but they say, but Jesus was still a real person. So it's not a lie. It's not a lie out of whole cloth and a total mythical deception. He was a real person, but he was a rabbi, and he was killed by the Romans, and he hated the Romans, and he was a Pharisee, and you know, basically the Gentiles created an anti-Semitic lie around him. That's the narrative that they're promoting right now.
Mm. That's interesting.
Which is scapegoating Esau for their deception that benefited their prophecies.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I mean, I think that there's.
Are you guys? Are we doing calls?
Yeah.
Are we doing calls? Because I can only do a few more minutes. We're up on 2 hours now.
All right, great. No problem.
Was that in the plan? We don't have to. I'm just asking if that was on the.
Oh, do we?
We don't have anybody calling in, but we've got plenty of people in the chat. If anybody wants to call in, ask Adam a question, comment on anything we've talked about, the number's 1-855-877-5112. So let's give folks a minute to call in, and then, yeah, whenever you want to bounce, Adam, we really appreciate the time and the discussion.
Man. Well, and as people are, as people are rallying, maybe if we do get a call, great. If we don't, I just wanted to sort of expand the lens to this. This idea of like private apocalypses, right? It's almost like they're creating such adverse conditions in so many different fields, whether it's in the economy, it's in medicine, it's in finance, it's in the legal structure, it's the cultural media engine. That they're, it's almost like they're providing their audience, the vast majority of people who see this, a little glimpse into this like looming manufactured crisis that they want basically everyone to be trauma bonded by. They want this multi-generational traumatic energy to fuel.
But for people to always perceive it as a natural occurrence, or God's will, so to speak.
Right. One or the other. When in reality, it's definitely promulgated by specific agents. I mean, the vast majority of the time. And you've gotten into this connection with the Apostle Paul. Interestingly enough, being a pupil of Gamaliel. And Gamaliel, did you know that he was purportedly the great-grandson of Rabbi Hillel? And that most, yes, so Gamaliel, there you go. That's a direct tie to Hillelism. And that really the whole schism between Shammai and Hillel gets reconfigured in Christianity, and it plays itself out.
Yeah, there's a book out there, and I know people have speculated that the type of like Pharisaic stuff that Jesus was saying was very in line with the school of Hillel.
Yeah, I think there's
a school of Hillel and the school of Shammai, early Pharisaic movements, and people associate Jesus with Hillel. And it's interesting that Paul claimed to be a pupil of Gamaliel, who was related to him.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good historical train of thought there. It looks like we do have a call in the queue, so right before you go, we'll go ahead and take a call.
All right, I'm going to press talk here. We've got area code 813. Let's do a quick sound check and then sound off with your question or comment. Are you there?
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
It is good that we are here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Zetetic?
Yes, Zetetic.
Means to proceed by inquiry?
Yes, sir.
as in Zetesis.
So, is that Greek? I don't know.
Yes.
I don't want to get off topic. But what I do want to talk about is, so we talk about Adam, how he doesn't, I'm not sure if he does, but we're thinking about a solution. And so we're thinking about an answer, like the what now. So Adam has exposed what this is. And so something called Apollonianism has come up with an answer to, like, because we want to have community. And so I'm thinking, I'm asking you guys, what do you think is a good, what's your idea about how do we create them? Do we need a religion? Do we need a philosophy? Do we need a proactive solution where we could come together and to stand up against what they're doing?
Mm-hmm.
Is that clear enough?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that was clear enough.
Yeah, that was I understand what you're driving at. In other words, what are ways of responding to this kind of apocalyptic script that they want to materialize in the real world through intentional aim? And in other words, how do we avoid basically just being shocked and awed and essentially paralyzed into what they deem to be a foregone eventuality coming in the future? So,
like, do we need an organized religion to fight against this?
I don't know.
Adam, what do you think?
Yeah. What do you think, Adam?
No, you do need organization, but you don't need a religion.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a group of people that unite around things that's not fairy tales.
Mm-hmm. So, like,
how about the sun rising during the day?
What does the sun rising have to do with?
Does the sun give us life? I mean, can we make a spiritual metaphor out of that?
Oh, I see.
Gather around.
I don't think that we need. I just think we need organization.
And
how about don't wipe out white people?
Right.
The what?
Yeah.
Well, okay. One.
That's my little 2 cents.
No, it's an interesting question. Like Apollonianism, are you referring to like Apollonius of Tyana,
Mark,
or are you referring to like the god Apollo?
This guy Mark Brahman, and together with Richard Spencer, they're coming up with this thing called Apollonianism, which they're trying to elevate the god Apollo as something to get behind, which I appreciate that, but at the same time, I'm Irish, and the Romans totally ransacked and messed up Ireland, so I'm not going to... But, I'm trying
the Romans imposed Christianity on my Viking ancestors.
Right.
Yeah. And so why would Apollo and Roman religion already lost to Judaism.
Yeah. So why would we take that on?
Right. I don't think that
exactly. And what's the point of having like mythical archetypes if you don't really believe in them, if you don't believe that they were historical things? I don't think it'll actually work. It won't have the same effect. That's why Jesus won out over these things, is because they did such a good job of euhemerizing him and putting him into history and making people believe he was a real figure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's that.
So what I'm doing with Aquarian is I'm leaning on the astro-theological suppositions. I'm not sure if that word's right.
But what is having myths and stuff about the stars? How does that help us here on Earth?
Right.
The stars don't have any impact on the issues we have here on Earth, which is a bunch of Abrahamics controlling things and a bunch of elite controlling everything and everybody being dumbed down. I don't think anything to do with the stars is going to help us with that.
Right.
We can get behind acknowledging that the sun gives life and light and warmth. And
okay, we're behind that. We love the sun. I love the sun. The sun's great, but
So we could, like, that's a common thing that we could get behind, and we could see that that's actually the common thing behind religion. So we could break out of the literal interpretations
How about we organize by common goals and common interests? I think that's a better thing to unite around and focus on than the sun or the stars.
If we could show people that religion is based on they've literalized these allegorical things. If we could show them the mythological things behind it, then we show them that it's not, these stories aren't literal. Jesus isn't a literal person, it's an allegorical thing, and that's a step towards demythifying these things, and then we move forward from there.
I think the main...
I could be wrong.
Yeah. That's it.
I'll let you have another caller on.
That's an interesting point.
All right, Adam, you're the best. I love you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I mean, the thing is, I don't think we have to divinize reality in order to fully appreciate it. You know, I don't necessarily think. Yeah, I don't necessarily think
you don't need to treat God to appreciate trees.
Right. Yeah, you don't have to have like a Lord Trident or like a sirens and nymphs to like be appreciative at the grandeur of water and how water is a life source that is essential for life in the same way the sun is. So, but again, you don't have to proclaim that the water is overseen by nymphs. Or you don't have to worship at a riverside altar of Poseidon or something.
There's a zillion different ways you can sort of pierce that veil for people. Just pointing out the hypocrisy sometimes is enough, right? Like we talked about some of those anecdotes I had before with dogma and other things that just exposed a certain hypocrisy that made me start, scratching my head. And that's what it's really all about. We don't have another caller in the queue. I see Adam is still here. I know you said you had to jump. But what were your thoughts on the content so far, and any other thoughts you want to share before you jump, Adam?
Well, you brought it up, but we didn't talk about it at all. But that Chat GPT thing that you shared that I retweeted, number one, I didn't even realize that was Zetetic, a Zetetic account that I was retweeting.
Yeah,
and but that was such a good one. What you got that thing to say, how the AI to admit that Christianity was like spiritually and culturally conquering the nations with the Jewish religion. It aligns perfectly with that clip that I posted of E. Michael Jones the other day, where he says, "Yeah, I talked to a Japanese woman, and she says that they don't want to. That Japan doesn't want to become Christian because then they'll lose their culture to the Jews."
Well, and just before you go, here's one other one, just to extend that reference there. I went into ChatGPT, and one of the ways I was able to prompt some of these replies is I selected like a task function, and it was like complete the sentence, basically, like in an essay form. And so I gave it this prompt of, besides the one you retweeted, this is another one, where I ask it, many more pagans and their traditions were eliminated during the rise of Christianity, whereas Jews were preserved, and then it starts in the form of Judaism. The rise of Christianity saw the suppression and persecution of many pagan religions and their practices. Many pagan traditions were outlawed and replaced with Christian ones. This included the destruction of places of worship and the burning of books and artifacts related to pagan practices. Jews were largely spared from this persecution as they were viewed as a separate religion with its own distinct set of beliefs and practices. This allowed Judaism to survive
and even flourish in some cases, while many of the pagan
They were
traditions,
playing their role in Christianity as being the ones who rejected the Messiah, and that who would eventually, in the end, come to believe in him. So they were preserved through the theology, and central. Hated the enemies of the gospel. According to the gospel, they're your enemies, but loved and chosen on account of the patriarchs.
right? They are our spiritual brothers, right? This whole appeal of
right.
Oh well, no, we have so much in common. We actually love our spiritual foreign ancestors, but we
get
have
our salvation from them. They're the root.
Right. They are the root. Exactly. They are the root, and the Christians are the branches.
Them. Right. Salvation comes from them.
Right. And
which is what they wanted to begin with. They're the light into the nations, and now Christians are like, yeah, they're our light. Jesus is our light.
So I mean, in a way, it's kind of like we hear this idea of Christian anti-Semitism, right? But people who are called white today, who are Europeans, technically, Christianity is like the original anti-whiteism to a great extent.
It is. It taught us that our cultures, our traditions, our ancestors were all worshiping demons and inherently evil and damned for hell if it weren't for the Jews to reject their Messiah, so that we can all be saved.
Right, and you have the E. Michael Joneses of the world being like, oh well, there is no future for the European people unless we continue to believe in Torah Messianism and Catholicism. Otherwise, we're going to revert to chasing pigs in the wilderness. Just like, dude, like, you're of European ancestry, supposedly, and you don't see how that's just denigrating all of your ancestors that came before that actually produced your line. Like, it's just like, wow.
It's saying my people are wrong, and the only people, everybody's always been wrong all over the world except for the nation of priests. They're the only ones that know of the true God.
Mm-hmm. And for a future discussion, I would like to dovetail that priestly class insight in with this whole idea of Abram from Northwest India, and that the Abramist caste and the Brahmins actually having perhaps some spiritual cultural influence on the rise of Abrahamism. So that's kind of a field of research that I'm looking into.
It seems like they had an amalgamation of syncretic blend of Canaanite and Babylonian, Egyptian, Greek. They incorporated it all.
Yeah, it's I think some Indian beliefs too, especially with the whole idea of a priestly caste.
For sure.
Because you have like
reincarnation, even reincarnation also is a belief in Judaism.
That's exactly right. Gilgul, exactly.
Zoroastrianism is another one that they incorporated into Christianity.
Yes.
Christianity even has stories that scholars believe is based on Romulus. That's the Roman mythical founder.
Oh yeah, Romulus.
Odyssey too. The Odyssey.
Yeah.
What?
That's awesome. Yeah, Romulus and Remus. It's almost like an inverted Jacob and Esau narrative.
Exactly.
So
they very well could have got their Jacob story from that.
Yeah,
possible.
Yeah.
Or from Egyptian.
Mm-hmm. Set and
the Egyptian
Osiris, right?
Egyptian twins. Yeah.
Awesome discussion, man. Thank you so much for calling in. I'll be in touch after we close out here, and really appreciate the call in. Had some really good, fired on a lot of good cylinders. Glad we could have another episode together.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, guys.
Awesome, dude. Have a great rest of your night.
Take care.
All right, let's take a quick bio break, and then we'll finish the show.
Looking upon these frail creatures, one would not think that they could contain such power. One could rule the universe with it. You must find them for me and destroy them!
So, you've got an idea for a business, the store of your dreams. There's just one thing to figure out: everything. That's why Shopify's all-in-one commerce platform makes it easy to sell online, in person, and everywhere else. Sell on social media, source products with an app to get that first sale feeling. It's the only solution that gives you everything you need to sell everywhere you want. So when you're ready to bring your idea to life, power it up with Shopify.
Hybrid work is better with Lucid, the visual collaboration suite. Brainstorm visually on an infinite canvas. Identify your team's best ideas. Share, comment, collaborate. Discover opportunities, spot problems, draw conclusions, make decisions, and win over stakeholders to get your work across the finish line. Try Lucid today.
We're back from our bio break. Thank you guys for continuing to tune in. For those of you left in the live stream, we just said goodbye to our special guest, Adam Green. We really appreciate him giving us the time. We'll be tuning into his debate. What was the channel you said?
Modern day debate. It's Saturday night. I'm not sure the exact time.
Yeah, check out nomorenews.org.
Check out his Twitter as well.
Twitter is really good.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll connect with him on different levels. Follow us on Twitter as well.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great discussion. You and Adam, are on a totally different level than me. I try to bring some anecdotes and things when what you guys are saying really resonates. But we've had some really good engagement in the chat. It seems like this is a topic that people are really interested in. We try to sort of broaden the scope a little bit here at Zetetic.news, although there is like a persistent overlay with Adam's work, that I think is relevant to talk about. We were just talking on the bio break about the Ipsy-Dixit fallacy and the presupposition involved with these different belief systems. And I mean, it's really pervasive. We're almost a society of presumption now.
Society of presumption. I really, really like that, because that's really what a presupposition is it's just sort of axiomatic presumption. You're just declaring something to be true from the outset, and no one can get a word in edgewise beyond that axiom.
Yeah.
It's a type of premise rigging You're rigging the
Yeah.
premises ahead of time.
I mean, the one
before
that
any discussion's
immediately
right.
came to mind during the discussion, but that I didn't want to like jump in with was gravity.
Sure.
You know, the presupposition. I mean, the Chinese balloon. Everybody's presupposing it's Chinese because the media just says that it is. You know, presumptions are created like ad nauseum. They're really one of the most cancerous forms of egregore, which is another term that you've brought to everybody's attention. And we got some kudos in the chat for putting the definition up there for people. Egregore, it's a subject we talk about a lot, these thought forms that manifest themselves, especially the more of a collective egregore you create, you know, the more likely it is to physically manifest. And that was another, I thought one of Adam's best line is prophecy is predictive programming, you know, and it's definitely true.
Absolutely. I mean, there's
it's like we believe in end times cataclysms, famine, earthquakes, natural disasters. Well, when they don't start just organically occurring, it's almost like they're like, well, we'll just create them ourselves to fulfill that prophecy and achieve the ends of what that prophecy, you know, all the ancillary, aka genocide, world control, you know, all the things spoken about in this book.
Well, yeah, and you hear the phrase a lot, you know, the ends justifies the means.
Right.
But when it comes to this prophecy stuff, it's the means will justify the ends. Right? And that's arguably way scarier than, you know, the Machiavellian, more common phrase. Because, I mean, it's the whole paradox of, like, the noble lie, right? Plato's idea, which is, like, if you can get the masses to believe something for their own good that leads to a cooperative herd, essentially, then it's for their greater good. That's the sort of idea of the noble lie, is that it's incumbent upon the elite. It's like a noblesse oblige to feed the plebs something that gives them a sense of purpose and meaning in allowing them to just sort of accept their lot in life. And the thing about apocalyptic belief systems is that they're inherently dangerous because it requires deception in order to edify the people who are deceiving the masses as being superior. And so in a lot of ways, you know, the whole Marx quote of like religion is the opiate of the masses. But I think that that's only like part of the way true, because when you bring in this egregore lens, it's really the masses are the food or the fuel of religion. It's not so much that religion is just this like thing that's given to the masses as a drug or an opiate to put them to sleep, although that is kind of an ancillary function. The deeper reality is that the masses are actually food.
It's kind of like
or
when
fuel for the religious belief system.
It's kind of like you brought up the chat GPT conversations you've had, and the corollary I see to that is you can't have AI without humans first, right? Like it's not just that humans created this thing and set it free. There are human proofreaders and trainers,
active managers
who are laying eyes on it. Now they have sophisticated ways to make it scale, but without that, it isn't what people are experiencing. Similarly, to your point, you know, you need a population of people to believe in this thing before that thing has any kind of physical power.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were talking on the bio break about something that we touched on with Adam because of one of the callers asking about solutions, you know, and I think Adam has gotten some criticism. Certainly Alex Jones has gotten some criticism. Like, at what point do we, you know, stop trying to just expand our awareness of everything that's going on and actually take some kind of action? You know, is it analysis paralysis to just endlessly focus on the Abrahamic deception or climate warfare, or, you know, what is the value, well, of talking about it and publishing it on the internet, you know, and trying to, like, that's seems to be what a lot of people think needs to be done to, like, actually do something. Obviously there are other things you can do, like locally, physically, with your family and community and that sort of thing, but like the broader deception matrix, whatever you want to call it, you know, is this the effective path? You know, can we just endlessly talk about it and expect to, like, make a change? I think partially yes, because it is a crisis of awareness.
Yes,
and we're still at that step of action because of, man, the success of the program, the length of the program,
right?
All sorts of other physical things that they're doing to subvert the mind from becoming aware of what's being done. I do think that there's value in that, and oftentimes that's coming from an armchair commenter anyways, that kind of critique on this sort of endeavor.
Yeah, that's it. It is kind of like a low-hanging fruit criticism a little bit, because, like, yeah, anyone can say, oh, not enough difference is being made. You know, that almost comes from, like, a place of preferential stagnation a little bit. Because, like, if you just keep researching and finding out the extent of the deception, I could see how after a while you kind of become just shocked and awed by the grandeur of it, and you could get to a place where you're just in, like, a just let it happen sort of mode. And I think that's what these kind of criticisms are designed to attack and assail, is like, oh, you just want to let it happen, basically. It's like, well, we don't want to, but we're excavating the extent to which it's going to be difficult to prevent at this point because of the incremental implementation over time. And it's just like in markets, right? I mean, if you have a 15-year bull market, you know, it's going to take a while for a truly bearish signal to reverse that market. You know, it might take 2 years of essentially topping out before it really starts to move downward in a more precipitous fashion. And the people behind the central banks, right, they want to do that to the entirety of the world economy, and especially America, is they want to essentially short the entire economy into the ground. And when they do that, they're assuming that the vast heaping majority of people, you know, 95+%, are just going to become so fear-driven and panicked by the media hysteria that they'll just capitulate and acquiesce to whatever the proposed solution is that they already knew ahead of time what they wanted to implement, you know. And it makes you wonder.
It creates a spectator society, basically.
It creates a spectator society a little bit. And I kind of understand at least the intention behind, like, wanting to, like, do something about it. However, this particular matrix is very good at assimilating opposition.
And that's why we're showing on screen these little gray Skittles, because it's all about that homogenization of not just the color of the skin, but like the ideals.
Yes.
And you hear in the economic news the Great Resignation. And this is coinciding with discussions about like the tech layoffs and the different perturbations in the macroeconomic situation with inflation and etc. People just exiting the workforce, not returning, retiring if they can. You know, I remember when Obamacare came out, there was huge resignation of doctors who just didn't want to deal with the government bureaucracy because they knew they were basically being taken out of the equation. And what you're going to be left with is, you know, these little gray Skittles that don't know anything. I mean, as another anecdote, I went to Walmart today, went to the deli counter. The lady, not only was she a very poor listener, but she barely knew English. Then I asked where something was of another Walmart employee, and she didn't know English at all. She told me in English that she didn't know English and didn't know where anything was. And I felt bad for both of them, because to me it was just a sort of a distillation of what we're seeing across industries and the global economy. This sort of gradual reduction in the IQ of the people who man the infrastructure to a large extent. I mean, in our area, they're raising the wages of bus drivers, but they still can't hire enough. And there's all sorts of, you know, all the restaurants that close, you know, those people went on to other things. They got, some may still be unemployed, or, you know, and what we're going to be left with are these little gray Skittles that can maybe turn the lights on so you can, you know, do your shopping. We posted this in the Telegram. There was a pilot grocery store that has AI face scanners on all of the freezers and other, you know, groceries, that it's not just automatic lights anymore to combat climate change, but there's automatic locks on the doors too. And you have to be an approved shopper, you know, to go in and pick out what you want to feed your family tonight. And if you're not approved, that it's not going to unlock. And of course, then you're just going to get riots that destroy the infrastructure, and then nobody has anything to eat. And it's all very orchestrated from the top down, it feels like.
And that's what I was referencing earlier with Adam, is like it seems like the entire economic superstructure, the corporate superstructure, is intentionally built to be hyper fragile like this. And that's what, with all the anti-competition and the hyper bureaucratism in the government.
That way you can literally have a bad chemical derailment that destroys the productive capacity servicing a huge number. You know, you can have forest fires that destroy a whole season of the food.
Or like randomly like 10 feet of snow in an area that hasn't had that ever. Like with the Northwest.
Directed energy weapons, solar radiation management experiments going on all the time. And this whole fabric of weather balloons doing God knows what, you know, broadcasting radio waves, and who knows what else, projecting holograms, shooting kinetic weapons.
stratospheric aerosol injections. They've openly admitted that program's been going on for decades. And I think that the more you find out about this stuff, the more the things closest to you and like most valuable, like take on that much more immediacy, I think. And I think that's actually really the substitute culture that we need, is one of pro-family survivalism, essentially. I mean, and beyond survivalism, thrivalism, right?
Right.
If I were to coin a term, right, I think that you could create a vitalist culture, for example. If you look up the philosophical ideas behind vitalism, I would say that has, between vitalism and pan-experientialism, those two philosophical outlooks, when combined together, is really the evolution of Stoicism. And Stoicism was the most pointed kind of counter-religion to Christianity back before it was declared the official religion of the Holy Roman Empire. Stoicism was really, and it really, I think, there needs to be kind of a neo-Stoicism that incorporates some of these ideas like pan-experientialism and vitalism, synthesized together into a society that essentially refuses and mounts a great refusal of all the thanatoid industries, all of the death and misanthropic and destructive, degenerate forces in the world.
I saw a report today that a local news outlet did an investigative report on the amount of money the government is spending tracking homeschooler students that didn't show up, to public school. And the state spent like $7 million in the last year tracking down, contacting to make sure that they're safe. And I think this, with everything that's gone on since the cerveza virus, people finally taking a good hard look at what's being taught in the public schools, and having some time at home with their family to then hear questions being asked about the cerveza virus, and is opening their minds to many of these other topics. Hey, if my government's been lying to me, maybe my church has been lying to me, maybe the licensing board has been lying to me, et cetera, and it just kind of spirals from there, which, I think that's kind of the nature of a truth seeker individual, is to drop seeds. And we hope bringing folks like Adam on the show are dropping seeds for people who may have found us but aren't that familiar with Adam, and vice versa, right? The folks that follow Adam very closely maybe aren't exposed to some of the subjects that we typically talk about, and that's kind of the cross-pollination effect that we're trying to inculcate here at Zetetic.news. And as a reminder, if you're new to the show, we try to do a stream once or twice a month if we can. We've been posting a lot of smaller clips. If you head over to our YouTube channel, you can see we've been posting a lot of smaller pieces. These are excerpts from past shows, and we've got over 300 hours of original content like this on our YouTube and on the website Zetetic.news. So check all of that out. We talk about pretty much everything. There's not much that we don't talk about, although I think our focus is on the very things that the powers that be seem to want to censor.
Yeah.
That's kind of like maybe the foundation of what we're trying to bring to the table. You know, we realized even before this came to be, Zetetic.news, that they were already doing this. They've been doing this for decades, really, just in an incremental, however, accelerating fashion. And the countermeasure, right, is to try and focus on those very things that they don't want you to do, because it just seems to be the case that whatever they want you to do is either against your best interest, or if they don't want you to do is probably in your best interest. You know, for example, they don't want you to avoid taxes.
Right.
You know, they don't want you to speak freely.
Right.
But that's like a survival defense mechanism, you know.
They don't really want you to be able to collect rainwater or grow your own food or have underground storage facilities or, you know, any of the things that, of course, they're doing all the time. But it's this schizophrenic double standard reality of do as I say and not as I do.
Yeah, I mean, I saw recently that Biden's administration is proposing a hike on the capital gains from like 20 to 40%, or is it 30 to 40%?
Oh my Lord.
And it just boggles the mind. Of course, people don't have the mental energy to like contend with some of these topics we're covering. They're just trying to survive.
Yeah.
They're in a state of fight or flight. When, if you earn a W-2, the government takes between like 25 and 30+% off the top. So 30% of the year you're working for Daddy Gov, and what you take home, you then, of course, pay additional taxes when you buy something. But now, if you are able to save anything after paying all your bills and invest it in something that is successful, then they want to take not 20%, they want to take 40%. And it's like, for what? So we can have gray Skittles and feel inclusive? Like, we didn't mention this on the show, but it's almost like backdoor reparations.
Yes.
You know, this sabotage of the economy. It's like, okay, we're going to lower the standard of employees. So we slit our own wrists by creating a unfriendly, unhelpful work environment, both internally and externally, for a customer and for an employee. And then it just creates a never-ending spiral of loss of value.
Yeah.
And then there's a mass resignation in the consumer market as well. And you're working all this time for this little amount that the government lets you have, and then you successfully turn it into something else, and now they want double what they wanted just because of a literal indigent, senile, I mean, in front of everybody's face. What did he recently say? That he had to have surgery, and they took part of his skull off to see if he had a brain in there. And I know that's like trying to be self-deprecating humor like George Bush used to do, but like it's so in your face.
Well, yeah, at this point it's really a kind of braggadocious mockery. It's like, oh, look at what we've reduced the American leadership to. I mean, this nation's gonna fold like a poker game if we can just, you know, steamroll an election, and you know,
we can float a balloon across the country and then blow up a train here, earthquake a country there,
destroy 20 food processing facilities over here. I mean, it is neo-Bolshevism.
Arson is so hard to forensically identify. I mean, we don't have a forensic staff anymore because, you know, we had budget cutbacks, you know, like, so we can't even determine. It's just write it off as a loss.
Right.
You're going to pay all these taxes anyways. Just write it off as loss.
Well, and the thing I really like Gerald Celenti's framing around the problem with governments today is that they're not really representative of anything other than mafia interests, and that
who can argue with that?
And if we can confirm in the public mind that we don't have any representatives and that we indeed are ruled by mafioso tribalist oligarchs, then we have to see the tax system as basically a loan sharking system or a vigorish system. If you watch the show The Sopranos, they always talk about, oh well, the vig is 5% a week, and I looked that up. I was like, what is a vig? That just means like the cut to the person allowing you to operate, essentially, and it comes from the Italian word vigor, but the full word is vigorish. And so it's interesting because the implication is that someone else's efforts are actually providing the vigor and vitality for someone else that doesn't have to work. And so really that's what the tax system is. We've already seen in COVID they can print $7 trillion in under 30 months. And yet they're still shaking people down for 30-40%. Whoa, that's like graft. That's a vigorish system. So in other words, like these mob bosses, they don't need any tax money. They're closest to the money printer. The tax system is there to just make the people think that they're contributing to their well-being by giving the government this, that, or the other thing, so that people can, people who are less fortunate have a social safety net, blah, 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 blah. Well, how do you jive that with, they printed enough money to basically end world hunger, but hunger rates have just gone up. So that just shows you the entire system is a fugazi.
It's an inversion completely. It's just like whatever they name a bill, it's the opposite of what they're saying.
We live in a techno-feudal plantation that's run by the Five Eyes and the intelligence apparatuses, and we know who's behind that: the central banks and the military-industrial complex and the Codex Alimentarius food monopolization system.
Well, it's like whatever you subsidize, you get more of. So if you create a fund pool for these certain disabilities, you're ultimately going to have some people who strive to achieve those disabilities. And we're playing a background video. I won't play the audio. We covered it in one of our early shows. We probably touched on it multiple times, but this is a local here nearby in North Carolina. Crystal, she got a psychiatrist who's basically a butcher to pour Drano in her eyes because she was BIID, body dysmorphic, whatever, identity disorder, and she has always wanted to be blind, so the Drano did the trick, and she's living on disability. I mean, they got social workers there helping her read Braille in this little TV spot, and it's whatever you subsidize, you tend to get more of, and that's the most cancerous thing. I can almost imagine, and actually that is reminding me of a tweet we made on our official Twitter. I'm trying to find it now, but it was in response to something Elon Musk said, and this gets to the sort of society of presumption we talked about before. Elon replied to this thing about Fauci and how, published by Newsweek, how Fauci fooled America. And Elon comes in here and says, exactly, Fauci egregiously betrayed the public trust. And my reply to that was basically, well, how did he
how is he able to do that?
How did he betray the trust in the first place? Like, why did we trust him, and with what? And the presupposition here is that, because he works for the National Institute of Health and the Department of Health and Human Services and Center for Disease Control, all these like Orwellian terms, that it's a positive thing for you, but in reality, if you look into the history of the Department of Health and Human Services, it always was essentially an appendage of this massive government largesse called the Federal Security Agency, which later basically splintered into all these little individual government companies that have their own Orwellian name rather than just blanket Federal Security Agency. But
it became Social Security,
Department of Education,
Department of
you name it.
Food and Drug Administration.
Food and Drug Administration came out of this. Okay, this massive largesse, and
it was originally like the War Research Service.
Correct. So I put some they still have this on Wikipedia. I mean, it's like so in your face. But it says secretly the Federal Security Agency was also a cover agency from this is the whitewash, from 1942 to 1944 for the War Research Service, a secret program to develop chemical and biological weapons.
Boom.
And I guess the idea is, well, if we know what will kill you, then we must know what's good for you too, because they eventually rebranded the whole thing Department of Health and Human Services, but interestingly, the original head of this War Research Service was George W. Merck. And I guess my point here is this supposition society, whether it's theology or science or pick your topic, right? We are a society of presumption, and the presumption, Department of Health and Human Services, is like they're a benevolent force trying to like help you out. Right. And so he really didn't betray the trust. People misplaced their trust in him to begin with,
right,
because of these Orwellian names and their lack of knowledge about the background.
He took advantage of people's ignorance.
Yes,
is more proper.
Absolutely.
Betraying the public trust implies that there was a transparency of information to be trusted.
Right.
There was not.
Right. And so my point to Elon here is, until we can, you want to grandstand and hot dog on your own Twitter platform, to look like a good guy, right?
As if this guy doesn't betray the public trust.
Right.
Oh, God.
But like to get on that what do you call it? That outrage bandwagon against Fauci. It's like, if you don't call out this background, this infrastructure, this huge largesse that just needs to basically be dismantled, you're just going to get another little Fauci character. Mm-hmm. And there are all sorts of little public health ministers jockeying for position within this power structure who dress just like him and, put a bow tie on and their little spectacle glasses and white coat and can, do the dance in front of the TV. That's what they're basically media, like you call it the occult thespian network. And that's
because that doesn't just mean like Michael Douglas the Game and crisis actors. It means people who have an ulterior motive and are misrepresenting their true role in the public eye.
Right.
That they have NDAs, they've got who knows what other, leverage on them, and they're performing a role, and I think that Adam's right when he says that the whole Ye Fuentes thing was sort of a
controlled op from the beginning.
Yeah, just sort of an astroturf like kind of flop fest, just like January 6th. That whole rigmarole of it was a velvet rope revolution, basically. The insurrectionists posed for photos, and They had a few laughs. They had a few prayers, and the politicos just got to come in the next morning and resume their putsch. It's the same thing with this. It's like
it's more.
Oh, this is supposed to be the guy who's standing up to the centralization of media and entertainment by like wearing a
It
gimp
just
mask
creates
and-
more psychological support for censorship, basically.
Precisely, and it, all the stuff that they're trying to pass down in Florida with the hate speech laws and stuff. If we find if a deputy finds a flyer on the ground nearby where you're walking, and he doesn't think that it's very nice to a certain group of people, well, not only is it a $200 littering fine,
I've said it before.
It's a 5-year felony imprisonment. I mean,
if silence is violence, well, then we're fucked. Because,
Yeah, well, yeah. Silence is violence. Speech is violence. Just
breathing is violence. Apparently, because of
Yes.
CO2. Actually, farting is violence.
Farting is violence. Breathing is violence. Thinking is violence.
Yeah.
Existing in a non-melanated body is violence.
Right. And on that note, we'll close the show out. Y'all can check out the gray Skittles. I'm just checking the chat here.
And if you look at the packaging, the gray part where the Skittles are is almost like a little thought bubble over all these NPCs.
Yeah, don't think anything.
It's this
empty head, bonehead. That's what they call it.
Monochromatic, one-dimensional, blah, gray. Nothing there. Monoculture. And that's really what the whole DEI is all about. It's about creating a predatory retardation effect within society, where people self-sabotage and see it as a virtue.